And so, my dear ones, here we are, another Sunday, and now we're invited today to look at all of our centers all over the world, to look at one of our beliefs that states the manifest universe is the body of God. Or as Aurobindo would say, creation is for the delight of God. And Aurobindo was a great Indian sage. And so today we're looking at the idea that everything manifested, everything in form, is godly, is good and very good. And that we understand this more fully because we ourselves are part of that formed creation that Spirit brought into being so Spirit could know itself and celebrate itself and experience itself by means of each one of us. And that's what we're asked to look at today, to see the unity and the harmony in all of creation. Now, when he talks about all of creation, Ernest Holmes being the body of God, he's talking about everything visible, everything invisible, because there are those experiences that we all have that are invisible experiences that cause an effect. And so we're talking about it all, life, whether it is seen or unseen, heard or unheard. We're talking about all of life being the manifest body of God, and that includes everything, everything. And of course, in orthodoxy, the body of God is considered to be the Son, or the second person of the Trinity. But in metaphysical understanding and awareness, all that is manifest is the body of God. It's the outcome of an action and an interaction between spirit and between soul, spirit and law. The action between spirit and law produces an outcome, an effect, which is the body, creation, all of it. So it's a bit intellectual this morning what we're asked to look at, but we can grasp it in our own way because we have a feeling and a knowing that this is so. Anyway, but what happens to us all is that the challenge may come from us understanding that everything in form is absolutely part of the divine and is the divine in form, because once upon a time many of us grew up into the understanding and into the realization that we are dichotomized because we're born into original sin. And so it's like we're defective, and anything defective could not have anything to do with God. That just doesn't make any sense. But here's the thing about original sin. Original sin was introduced as a concept in the 4th century. Jesus was totally unaware of original sin. It has nothing to do with his teaching. And so it was introduced in the 4th century, aided and abetted by the great Saint Augustine, who was so besotted with sin. It was hard for him to get sin off his mind because he was a debauched person as a young person. And his favorite sin was the sin of sexuality. See, so he couldn't get sex off his mind, I guess. I don't know. But because of his experience and his difficulties therein, you know, all this thing, we must have been born with this sense of whatever it is whatever. But I'm telling you, true Christianity, or the teaching of Jesus, who were known as the followers of the way, nothing to do with original sin. We were born into a state of original justice, into a state of original grace, into a state of original beauty. That's how we were born. And so it's deep in the psyche to think that there is a dichotomy between the soul of us and the body of us. And then to add insult to injury, in medieval times it was decided that the body was bad, down with the body, and the soul was good, up with the soul, and further deepened the dichotomy between the soul and the body, the manifest and the unmanifest. And so we're recovering from that still, if you haven't noticed. We still are. And so now we're invited to understand that the body temple is the temple of the Most High, the Holy Spirit. It's the temple, it's the container, it's the vessel of life in all of its wholeness itself. And so we're asked and invited today to have a rethink about it all and take another look at this thing called body, and to stop berating it as we do. We do berate the body and we blame it for a lot of things. And we need to stop doing that if we want to unify and come into that congruence of that unity and the harmony and the oneness of all of life. Well, there's no doing that until we first do it within ourselves. I'm not going to get a sense that life is one thing and all life is magnificent and good, all of that that's going on out there, if I don't first have it here. I don't have a sense of myself here. And it wasn't easy, especially in religious life, until way into the 1950s and even into the 60s. You had people in religious orders of all kinds, flagellating themselves, beating their bodies, to keep their bodies, from causing all kinds of conniptions in their lives. And so I can't imagine how bashing up your body is going to help you not have an impure thought. I really didn't get that connection. Thank God they were finished with that when I entered the convent. But I did see some of those whips and things. And I tell you, nothing about it invited me to try it out. Nothing invited me to try it out. I thought, this is crazy. But anyway, there's a lot of craziness there. But, you didn't mind to be what you wanted to be. You had to go along with the program kind of thing. So if that's what they require. But then I remember a young seminarian telling me of a priest professor of theirs, and he says, yeah, I used to do one for the back and one for the wall and one for the back. He says, eventually I just started to hit the wall. It didn't make any sense to me. So here we are, but we laugh all about this, but it's not funny really, because we have this really bad press with regard to our body. Our body is the terrible thing that gets us into all kinds of trouble, which is the greatest load of baloney you could think about when you really analyze it. It's what the mind moves the body to do that causes whatever is going to happen, but there you are. But today we're called to have a great appreciation for the body and the body of all of creation. So we're asked to look at these questions. We're asked to say, well, if creation is the delight of spirit, if it is, what is so delightful about destroying our forests and destroying our rivers and destroying species and ignoring global warming, etc.? Those are the questions we're asked to look at. And what is so delightful about destroying anything in our own personal lives too, you see? And so that's the call today. If we really and truly can get ourselves around the idea that the manifest universe is the body of God, we could quicken things up a bit in our own lives personally and in all of life. Ernest Holmes says, look, he said, if you could just grasp the principles of science of mind and the practice of his heart, and you were going to apply those principles, he said, you would be experiencing the most magnificent experimentation you have ever experienced. And so that's the invite today, to understand that it is an interwoven thing, that we're in the web of life, and every strand of that web is so very, very, very important. And it's given to you and to me to take very careful, good care of this strand that is you and the strand that is me. We are told it's all God. Now, what does that mean in your life and mine? Well, here's what it does. It doesn't mean that I am the totality of God. I'm not all of God. I know that. I'm not all of God. But God is all of me. And how can that be so? Well, think of ice. Ice is all of water. Water is all of ice. But not all water is ice. And yet, ice is water in ice form. And yet, not all water is ice. It's the same thing. I am not all of God, but God is all of me. Why? Because it's only God. And everything was created out of that one thing, that one substance. There was nothing else. It's nothing, wafting by one day and God grabbed it and said, oh yeah, I'll make it out of that. all came up out of the impulse of this energy, this power, this essence, this substance that is called life. And you and I very often fall out of our sense of belonging. We fall out of our sense of belonging and we move into a sense of separation. And so we separate everything, so we compartmentalize everything. Yet they're okay, but they're rotten. I'm not going near them. Yeah, I like that, but not that over there. Or whatever that is that we allow ourselves to have happen within us. You see, it does really state that in my Father's house there are many mansions, and that simply means many, many states of consciousness, many states of awakened consciousness. And so you and I can enter into any of those states or mansions, as we decide to, as we allow ourselves to, as we wake up to, wanting to. So where are you in your life? What do you think of yourself? What do you think of yourself? What do you think of your mind? What do you think of your body? And here's another thing that goes along with the, it's no longer a question of, coming to terms with original sin anymore, but what it is now for all of us is to come to terms with this thing called the shadowed self. There is the shadowed self. There is that aspect of our psyche that's there. And people are inclined to be afraid of that, the shadowed self. It's the repressed self, the stuffed down self, all those things we don't want to take a hard look at. We don't want to go there. And yet the shadowed self is brilliant. It's amazing. It's very much necessary and very much part of our experience. And until you and I embrace the shadowed self of ourselves, we're never going to know what it is to be congruent, to be a whole person expressing wholly. The shadowed self is there for a very good reason and a very good purpose. It's something that we can pitch things against and peg things on. You and I, we have to come to terms with this once and for all. It's not the first time I've said it. There's equal opportunity in you. There's equal opportunity in me to be either Darth Vader or Yoda. It can go any way on a dime. There's equal opportunity to represent either of those aspects of life and living. And remember, Darth Vader wasn't totally bad either. There's no such thing as total badness in anything or anyone. There is such a thing as total goodness, though, to be discovered, to be unraveled, to enter into the mystery of. So we have to stop this thing about, I'm no good at this, or I'm awful at that, or I'm dreadful here, I'm very bad there, or whatever. We need to stop all of that. It's dichotomizing us. It has to do with an ancient old belief that comes up out of the body is bad, and anything that happens regarding the body cannot be a good thing. And it's, again, you see it in Paul. That which I want to do, I do not do, and that which I do not want to do, I do. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. So we have to stop all of that because it is separating us. It is a dichotomy. We have to understand that without a shadow, none of us could appreciate light. Without darkness, none of us could appreciate light. And darkness has its purpose. Darkness has its purpose. Shades have their purpose. They're neither good nor bad. They're just what they are until you and I interact with them and make them something good or bad. So where are you, and it's the royal you, where are we now with regard to how we think about ourselves, how we feel about ourselves? What standing do we place ourselves on? How are we judging ourselves now? Are we judging ourselves now? What's going on? We need to come to that sense of satisfaction with who and what we are. Never was it a more metaphysical song than I Can't Get No Satisfaction. That could have been Augustine would have been singing that if he was in today's age, instead of saying, you have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts cannot find rest until they rest in you. But I'm sure his whole song was, I ain't got no satisfaction. I'm sure the ladies around him heard that a lot. But anyway, his mother knew that because she was always praying for him, her wayward son. She would be praying for him and praying from St. Monica, praying for him, praying for him, praying for him. And he'd listen. And he'd say, I'll think about it, Mom. And then she'd leave Bibles around her, the scriptures around for him to read. And eventually, of course, he read them. And, of course, he converted and he grew up and behaved himself and got his wits about him and went forward to do great good things. But it's an interesting thing that one thing can grab us and cause us to be fixated on that one thing. Now, it could be gambling, it could be the internet, it could be Facebook. Oh my goodness me, look at the hours that people spend on Facebook. It could be, it could be drugs, it could be drinking, it could be a whole array of things that have us fixated and get us caught up and cause us to feel down with the body. But it's not the body. It's not the manifest that's at fault here. It's the unmanifest. It's the force and the power of consciousness and thinking and so on. And I keep reminding us all there's no such thing as a stray thought, or there's no such thing as, a little fib or something like that. I love this piece. I came across it and I'm going to share with you. And it was written in the book of Mirdad by Mikhail Nemi. And he says, to think as if your every thought, this is what we're all invited to do, to think as if your every thought were to be etched in fire upon the sky for all and everything to see, for so in truth it is. So speak as if the world entire were but a single ear intent on hearing what you say, and so in truth it is. And so as if your every deed were to recoil upon your head, and so in truth it does. So wish as if you were the wish, and so in truth you are. Goes on, we automatically broaden our scope of empathy and concern when we realize that we are inseparable from all that exists. We no longer see ourselves as isolated entities whose being stops at the edge of our skin and whose empathy stops with our family or our race or our nation. We see that because we all arise simultaneously from a deep ocean of life energy, a vital connection always exists among all beings. We are all one. So it's a big thing they're asking us to do this week today, to focus on how we can promote the unity of oneness, how we ourselves in our day-to-day life and living out in the marketplace, wherever we are, to understand there's a real golden mean, a golden thread that holds us all together and keeps us all together as this one thing. And as Jane Goodall said, don't underestimate the power of one person taking one little bag of garbage to the recycling bin. It all adds up and it all matters. So, we're asked and invited into a new sense and sensibility about what it is to live life in community, in communion with each other, and to have the respect for honoring all of life, all of it, our rivers and our mountains, and what's happening to the mountains every time in Virginia, especially when they get eaten away by all the industrial stuff that's going on. And as somebody was saying to me how concerned they were about all the fracking that's going on and so forth, etc. To call us to consciousness so that we can be an influence wherever we are, so that we can safeguard this planet for the future generations, for our grandchildren's children, and not leave them with a hell of a mess to have to sort out because of what we're not doing or are doing now. And every voice counts. Every voice counts. Every little small action counts. It all adds up to a big thing. But mostly this week, I would invite us all to remember the honoring and the respecting of ourselves as individuals, Because as that teacher of mine used to end every talk with, honor yourself, love yourself, respect yourself, because God dwells in you as you. So if all of us are to show up as this representation of life and expanding life and enhancing life and enriching and uplifting life, then we can't fall asleep, and especially in this day and age when every voice counts. Every little deed counts. Every good thing counts. So if the world is going to change, then it has to change by means of you and me. There's nobody else going to change it. So for this coming week, we're asked to join in, globally speaking, internationally speaking, as people who are awake, people who are alert, people who are tuned in to making a difference wherever we are. No matter how small the difference seems to be, when it's all added up together, it's huge. So God, by means of each one of us, is on the move, upward, forward, and onward. And no great good thing ever happens without embracing change. Never happens without embracing change. And so that's always the challenge, whether it's me being more careful with recycling or whatever that is. It's your call and it's my call. And remember, above all else, that God, by means of you, is the radiant magnificence of its own life. God, by means of you, is the radiant magnificence of its own life. Whether you know it, whether you think it, whether you believe it, or whether you feel it, it's the truth. God, by means of you, is the radiant magnificence of life. And so it is.